Have you ever felt like a guest in your own family? Like you were just temporarily allowed to exist, as long as you didn't take up too much space? I'm June Whitmore. I'm 31, and I've spent most of my life being reminded, subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, that I was lucky they took me in. Except no one ever said what that actually meant. I grew up in a quiet Vermont town. My parents, Claire and Walter, were known for their charity work, their picture-perfect marriage, and their two golden children, my older siblings, Mark and Jenna. Then there was me, the miracle third child that arrived years later and never quite fit the picture. My mom always introduced me with a little laugh. "This is June, our surprise blessing," she'd say, as if I were a quirky accident they hadn't gotten around to fixing. I didn't notice it at first. When you're a kid, you take what you get. But I do remember small things, like how I never had a baby album, or any photos from when I was born. How my room was the converted laundry room, while Mark had a full basement suite. How every family story started with "before June was around," like I was a commercial break they had to tolerate. When I turned 18, I got a cake with my name spelled wrong. They blamed the bakery, but when Jenna graduated, they threw her a catered party with champagne and a monogrammed ice sculpture. I still remember the way Dad raised his glass that night and said to Jenna, "The best of us." I had just been accepted to a scholarship program out of state. No one mentioned it. I told myself they just showed love differently. That maybe I was imagining it. That maybe if I worked harder, achieved more, they'd notice me too. So I did. I graduated early, worked full-time during college, built my own life from scratch in Boston. No help, no loans from home, just sheer exhaustion and stubbornness. Last month, I got promoted to a senior project lead at my firm. It came with a 5-figure bonus, which, honestly, felt surreal. And stupidly, maybe pathetically, I decided to spend most of it on my mom. She always talked about this antique locket she saw in a boutique years ago, but never bought. I tracked it down. Custom restored the chain, engraved it with, "You gave me my start." I thought maybe, just maybe, it'd mean something to her. I gave it to her at Jenna's housewarming. She opened the box, blinked, and said, "Oh, June, you don't have to try this hard, honey. You already belong here." Then she shut the box and placed it on the windowsill, like a courtesy card someone gives out of obligation. Jenna laughed. "That's actually sweet, though. It's very... you." Mark raised an eyebrow and added, "Must have been a chunk of your paycheck, huh? Guess you really wanted to prove something." And Dad? He didn't say a word, just sipped his drink and asked Mark about his new car. I don't know how I didn't cry. Or scream. I just sat there, completely numb. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I went back to the kitchen to grab my charger. That's when I saw it. A legal folder, left half open on the dining table, next to a pile of mail. I wasn't trying to snoop, I just happened to glance down. It was a printed draft of my parents' living trust. I saw Jenna's name, Mark's, and then, Willa Rose Carter. Not mine, not June Whitmore. Willa Rose Carter, someone I'd never even heard of, was listed as a 25% beneficiary. I stood there, frozen, stomach churning. Maybe it was a typo. Maybe it was someone else's trust. Maybe. But then I saw something else. A date of birth. June 15th, 1992. My exact birthday. I was shaking. I opened my phone, searched the name, and within seconds, an old obituary popped up. Willa Rose Carter, died in a house fire, 1992. Except, the picture attached? It was me. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there in Jenna's guest room, staring at the ceiling. My phone in one hand, that obituary still pulled up, and my other hand clenching the locket I had just gifted to a woman who clearly never saw me as hers. The photo in the obituary was small, pixelated, but it was me. Same cheeks, same eyes. The exact same baby photo Mom used on our fridge magnets for years. Right down to the crooked headband and the dimple on the left. Except the name underneath wasn't mine. Willa Rose Carter. died June 15th, 1992. Age, 4 months. Born, February 27th. My birthday. There was even a quote from the grieving parents. We'll always remember her as our little miracle. Claire and Walter Whitmore, my parents. The same two people currently asleep upstairs, like nothing in the world was broken. I don't know what I thought I'd find when I kept scrolling. Maybe some rational explanation. Maybe a different family, same names. But every detail lined up. The location, the church that hosted the service, even the charity they asked donations to be sent to, the Vermont Children's Trust, the same one Mom dragged me to volunteer at every Thanksgiving growing up. I felt like I was watching my own funeral, except I was still alive. At some point, I started crying, silent and shaking, and I didn't stop for hours. I left Jenna's house before dawn without saying goodbye. I told her in a text that I had a migraine. She responded with a thumbs-up emoji. The next morning, I called out sick from work and drove straight to my parents' house. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to pretend to be polite to get them. Mom was in the garden when I pulled up, deadheading roses like it was just another Tuesday. "June," she said, genuinely surprised. "Is everything okay?" I didn't answer. I walked right up to her, pulled out my phone, and held the screen in front of her face. Her smile fell. "Do you want to explain this?" I asked, my voice already cracking. "Because I found this last night in your house, and that's me in the picture. But it says I died 30 years ago." She went completely pale. The pruning shears slipped from her hand and fell into the mulch. She whispered, "Where did you find that?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so unbelievably cruel. "You mean, where did I find my own obituary?" She didn't deny it. Didn't try to lie. She just slowly walked to the porch and sat down like her knees couldn't hold her anymore. "I was going to tell you eventually," she murmured. "It's just complicated." "Try me," I snapped. "I've got time. Start at the part where I supposedly died." She sat there for a minute. Then, like something broke loose inside her, she started talking. "You weren't supposed to be ours," she said. "You were left at a shelter in Burlington. No name, no papers. Just a note pinned to your blanket that said, 'Her name is Willa. Please give her a better chance.'" I stared at her, unable to process. Walter and we were already on a waiting list to adopt. Then, that fire happened at the Carter house. Willa had just passed. It was in the news. People were devastated. We had money, connections. And suddenly, a newborn shows up in our town with no trail? She looked at me like she was begging for understanding. "They let us bring you home under Willa's name. It was supposed to be temporary until paperwork cleared, but it never did. And when the dust settled, you were legally Willa Carter. So we just kept going." "You mean you replaced their dead daughter?" I said, stunned. "No," she said quickly. "We loved you. We raised you. You hid me. You let me think I was yours." She didn't argue. "Does Dad know?" I asked. Her silence was answer enough. I stood there, feeling like the ground had dropped out beneath me. My whole life I thought I was just invisible. Now I wasn't even real. Then I remembered something. That folder on the table. Why was that name, my name, in your trust? Mom blinked. "Because the Carters left money behind. A small fund in case Willa had any surviving relatives." I froze. "So you kept me for the money?" "No," she said quickly. "It was meant for you, eventually. We didn't touch it." But the way her voice faltered on eventually, that's when I knew. This wasn't just about hiding the truth. They profited from it. And the worst part? That fund? It was probably the same money they used to pay for Jenna's ice sculpture graduation party. That's when I decided. I needed to find the Carters. Because if anyone could tell me who I really was, it sure as hell wasn't the people who buried me at 4 months old. I didn't go back to my apartment after that conversation. I drove for hours. No music, no podcasts, just the sound of the road and the chaos in my head. I couldn't stop replaying her voice. "You weren't supposed to be ours." Like I was some stray dog that wandered into their yard and they just kept me. When I finally made it home, I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, just staring at the steering wheel. Then I went upstairs, opened the closet, and started pulling boxes. Birth certificate, photos, school records, all the things that were supposed to prove who I was. And all of it, every single document, had the same name: Willa Rose Carter. My whole life I'd signed forms as June Whitmore. But legally, that name didn't exist. I didn't even exist. It felt like I was watching myself from outside my body, like I was a character someone else had written. I stayed quiet for a week, didn't answer Mom's texts, ignored Jenna's passive-aggressive, "hope you're okay" emoji blasts. But then, like they always do, my family pretended nothing had happened. The next Saturday, I got a group text. Whitmore, 40th anniversary dinner, 6 p.m. Dress nice. No apology, no explanation. Just another performance for their friends and donors. I wasn't going to go. I swear I wasn't. But then I thought about everything they'd taken from me. The stories, the milestones, the money, the truth. And something in me snapped. So I dressed up. Simple black dress, hair down, no makeup, just me. The real me. Whoever that even was. When I walked into the house, the air was thick with fake smiles and expensive perfume. Catered trays floated past. Jenna was in full hostess mode. Dad stood by the fireplace, laughing too loud with some guy in a blazer who probably had a yacht named after Tax. Mom spotted me first. Her smile froze. I walked straight to her. "We need to talk," I said. Now she hesitated, then led me to the den, still decorated with Whitmore family portraits. Not a single one of me under age 5. I pulled out the envelope from my purse, the one I'd picked up from the county records office the day before. "Birth certificate," I said, placing it on the coffee table, "and a notarized affidavit confirming I was never legally adopted, which means the trust fund under Willa Carter's name. You've been claiming money under false pretenses." She looked like I'd slapped her. "I told you. We were going to give it to you eventually." "You used it," I snapped. The lawyer I spoke with showed me the disbursements, starting when I was 8, ending when I turned 18. College fund? That wasn't mine. Jenna's wedding? Fully paid from the Carter Fund? She opened her mouth, closed it, then said the one thing I didn't expect. "Your father doesn't know." I blinked. "Excuse me? He thinks you were his." She choked on it. "I never told him. I couldn't." I felt the floor tilt under me. "You mean all those years he ignored me? Treated me like I was baggage? He didn't even know?" She nodded. "He always blamed himself, thought you were just difficult, a hard child to love." I stared at her, my voice barely a whisper. "So he punished me for something you lied about?" Before she could respond, we heard voices outside the door. "Dad, where's June?" "It's picture time." Mom wiped her eyes, put on that damn public smile, and opened the door. "Coming, darling," she said. And just like that, she slipped right back into character. I stood there for a moment, completely still. Then I followed her out. The photographer had everyone lined up in the living room. Jenna and her husband, Mark and his 3 kids, Mom and Dad, standing tall in the center like royalty. "June, honey, over here." Mom gestured, placing me at the far end. Like a guest, like a footnote. The photographer lifted his camera. "On 3, 1, 2. And I said it, loud and clear. "I'm not a Whitmore." Everyone froze. I stepped forward, voice steady. "I was never adopted. Legally, I'm still Willa Carter. And this family has been lying about that for 30 years. Gasps, whispers. My father staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "What are you talking about?" he asked. I handed him the birth certificate. Watched his hands shake as he read the name. And then his face just broke. I've never seen that man cry. Not when his brother died, not when our house flooded in 2003. But he sat down on the armrest and started weeping. Right there, in front of everyone. Because I had just ripped the mask off a lie he never even knew existed. And all I could think, while standing in that room full of people who had never really seen me, was how empty I felt. Like maybe, just maybe, there was no version of me they would have ever accepted. If you've ever felt like a placeholder in your own family, if you've ever found out the people who raised you were keeping the one truth that could have made sense of your pain. I see you, and I swear, this next part, it's where things finally start to break open. Just not in the way I thought they would. After that blow up with my mom, I spent a full week alternating between rage and numbness. Some nights I couldn't sleep. Other nights I'd wake up screaming, my own name echoing in my head, like a question I no longer knew how to answer. Willa, June, Carter, Whitmore. Pick a name. None of them felt like mine anymore. But you know what finally broke me out of that fog? A damn group photo. Someone from Jenna's party posted it on Facebook. The whole Whitmore clan lined up in front of the fireplace. Champagne glasses raised, all fake smiles. I wasn't in it. I hadn't even been invited. Not even a courtesy text. Not a hope you're okay. I zoomed in out of reflex. There it was. The antique locket I'd given my mom. Around Jenna's neck. No caption, no explanation. Just family night with a heart. That was the moment I stopped grieving and started planning. The Whitmores were throwing a 40th wedding anniversary gala that weekend. Hotel ballroom, dress code. Full PR stunt for Dad's business contacts and Mom's nonprofit board. Technically, I wasn't on the guest list. Didn't matter, I showed up anyway. Not to cause a scene. But to correct the record, I walked through the revolving doors like I belonged there. Because for once, I wasn't going to shrink just to make other people comfortable. I wore all black, no jewelry, no lipstick, just clean, sharp lines and a spine made of every truth they tried to bury. The ballroom was packed, people clinking glasses, faking laughs, taking selfies in front of a rented floral wall. I spotted Jenna first, talking to some guy in finance who looked like he moisturized with arrogance. She caught my eye. And for a split second, panic flickered in her face. Then she recovered and smiled like we were sisters who actually liked each other. June, she said, walking over with that PR voice. Didn't expect to see you here? Yeah, I said. I figured you wouldn't. Before she could say more, I walked right past her and toward the podium at the front of the room. Someone was already up there thanking donors. I waited until he finished. Then I stepped up behind the mic. I didn't ask for permission. I just spoke. Hi. For those of you who don't know me, I'm June Whitmore. Or at least, that's what I was told my name was. The room got quiet, like flip the switch silent. I just wanted to take a moment to thank the happy couple, Claire and Walter, for 40 years of commitment. Not just to each other, but to keeping secrets that really didn't age well. My mom was already walking toward me. I raised a hand. Let me finish. I pulled out the envelope from my purse and laid it on the podium. Inside this is a notarized affidavit proving I was never legally adopted, which means the woman standing across this room spent 30 years pretending to be my mother while diverting funds from a trust that didn't belong to her. Gasps, murmurs, chairs scraping against the floor. But don't worry, I added. I'm not here to ruin your party. I'm just here to return something that was never yours to keep. I held up the locket. You gave this to my sister like it was just a piece of junk. But I engraved it for you. I thought it meant something. It didn't. So now, like everything else, I'm reclaiming it. I tossed the locket gently on the podium. The sound of it landing felt louder than anything I'd said. My mom's face was drained of color. My dad looked like someone had just canceled his legacy in real time. And then, just when I thought I'd dropped the final bomb, someone in the back of the room shouted, "Actually, she's not lying!" Everyone turned. It was Mr. Ashcroft, one of my dad's oldest business partners, board member, trusted family friend. He stepped forward, adjusting his tie. I handled the Carter Trust in the early years. I always wondered why the disbursements didn't match the paperwork. Now I know. My dad started to speak. Some excuse, some spin. But Ashcroft cut him off. You lied to me, to the board, to everyone. That's financial fraud, Walter. The room turned cold. The kind of silence that means real consequences are on the way. And all I could do was stand there, heart thudding like a war drum, realizing I hadn't just reclaimed my name, I'd just detonated theirs. I don't know if you've ever had to burn down a lie you were raised inside of, but if you have, if you know that sharp, aching grief that comes from telling the truth out loud, I see you. Some scars aren't visible, but they still bleed when the right memory touches them. And sometimes, healing doesn't start with forgiveness. It starts with saying, I know what you did, and I'm not pretending anymore. The day I met Thomas Keller, my biological grandfather, was oddly quiet. No dramatic music, no tearful reunion. Just two people sitting across from each other in a little cafe near the park, sipping black coffee and trying to make sense of the space between them. He looked at me like I was familiar, but from a dream he couldn't quite place. I see her in you, he said after a long pause. My daughter. Your mother. And just like that, the weight in my chest cracked open. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. But in that moment, I felt more seen than I ever had at any Whitmore gathering in my life. We talked for hours. He had followed my career quietly after confirming the DNA results I'd sent. He'd seen me quoted in a Forbes article 2 years ago and never connected the dots. Now he knew why the name felt off. He told me stories about my birth mother, Willow's biological mom, how brilliant she was, how she'd wanted to be a marine biologist but ended up pregnant at 19. Terrified, abandoned by the father, and pressured into silence by her family. He didn't defend the decisions that came after, but he gave them context. And in return, I told him about the Whitmores, about the lies, the trust fund, the way they made me feel like a long-term houseguest instead of a daughter. I wasn't raised with love, I said. I was raised with performance. He didn't say anything to that, just reached into his coat pocket and handed me a simple envelope. A key. To the house, he said. If you ever want it. 6 weeks later, I made it official. I legally changed my name to Willa June Carter. I kept June for the girl who survived all that silence. And Carter, for the woman I'm finally allowed to become. The Whitmores didn't take it well. My dad, Walter, went full damage control mode, tried to spin the whole thing as a misunderstanding, claiming I had mental health issues and fabricated the paperwork. Unfortunately for him, the press got wind of the Gala meltdown, and Ashcroft's confirmation carried more weight than his spin. 2 board members resigned. His foundation lost a 6-figure grant. And last I heard, the IRS is asking questions. Mom sent me a letter. Not an apology, but a strange mix of nostalgia and guilt. She ended it with, "We did our best with what we had." I haven't written back. Jenna's kept her distance, probably too afraid I'll sue. I won't. I don't want money from any of them. I already took back the only thing they really stole, myself. I now work with an organization that protects adoptees and helps adults navigate sealed records and late-life revelations. Every week, I hear stories that sound eerily familiar. And every time someone says, I just want to know where I came from, I remember that ache, that ghost of not belonging that follows you even into adulthood. But here's the truth. You don't owe loyalty to the people who built their comfort on your silence. Let that sit for a second. The lesson I've learned? Truth doesn't need anyone's approval to be real. And sometimes healing doesn't begin with forgiveness. It begins with calling yourself by the right name. If you've ever had to fight for the right to exist in your own life story, I hope you'll share your experience in the comments. And if my journey touched something in you, I hope you'll stay. There's still so much we need to name. Together.